Welcome to the Shared Path. I'm Maggie Linton. The 2023 All-Star Game will be held in Seattle, Washington, Tuesday, July 12th. Joining us to talk all things baseball is my dear friend, award-winning journalist Dan Schlossberg. He's author or co-author of 40 baseball books and more to come. He's also president emeritus of the National Travel Journalist Association and host of Travel Itch Radio. Welcome, Dan.
Great to see you, Maggie, always.
Always good seeing you. Let's begin with your passion for baseball. When did that begin?
A long time ago. In 1957, that's a long time ago, I was
A long time ago.
9 years old, and my dad and I turned on the old Zenith black and white TV and watched the World Series, which was the Milwaukee Braves against the New York Yankees. And everybody I knew, since I lived in northern New Jersey, everybody I knew rooted for the Yankees. However, the Milwaukee Braves won. Uber Dead pitched 3 complete game victories. And it was from there I became a Braves fan. And I'm still a Braves fan and very proud of my 2023 team.
Yeah, the Braves are just magnificent this year. They went all the way a couple years ago. Is it their turn again?
I think so. In fact, they've done all of this without their 2 best pitchers, Max Fried and Kyle Wright. And when those 2 guys come back, and Max Fried is going to be back right after the All-Star game, they're going to be unstoppable.
Yeah. They're going to be even better, as we can say, huh?
Yeah,
All right. Well, I got my Orioles shirt on right now in case people can't see these little birds and everything. But we've got to talk about the Orioles too. I won't say necessarily that they're a surprise, but they definitely are above expectations, aren't they?
very much so. And they're similar to the Braves because they're a very young team. And that really helps. If you look at the teams that are veteran, old teams, look at the New York Mets. I mean, they're bogged down with age and fat contracts and egos, and they're not going anywhere. But a young, hungry team like the Orioles, great team. Gunnar Henderson could be rookie of the year. Really, really solid team. I saw the Orioles play when I was at Sabre last year in Baltimore and very impressed with them.
Yeah. And Adley Rushman's going to be in the home run derby, and he's doing quite well too. That again, somebody that's fresh, and I even when they lose, we keep hearing from the players that they just go back out there and they say, "Oh, this is not the end of the world. We're just going to go out and continue to play."
That's right. And they have a unheralded manager, Brandon Hyde. Nobody knows anything about him, but they will because he's hung in there. There were
Yeah.
rumors that he was going to get fired a few years ago, but he's stuck with them and he's great with these young guys and getting them to play together as a team. And that's what it takes. You got to have a unified team.
He came from the Cubs, which I'm sure you know,
Yes.
and is doing really quite well. We're very pleased with him.
Yeah, the Orioles have done great. And that I still love that ballpark. Camden Yards is a great place to watch a game.
That is. The other thing is we have to kind of back up a little bit because you and I have just jumped right into all stars and things like that. But I want to talk about you said it started your love for baseball started when you were 9 years old, but then to decide then were you going to make it a career? No, but something did happen in between. You went to Syracuse, you're an orange man, and so your journalism pursuit also turned out to be just the right thing for you.
That's true. I originally wanted to be a White House correspondent to cover the White House. I just had interest in politics. I actually have 2 majors from Syracuse. One was journalism and one was political science. I was a double major. And I've got to tell you how my career started because this is a great story, Maggie. Freshman year in Syracuse, I was trying to get back to school. It was in January. There was intersession. There was a break. And I had gone home just for a few days, trying to get back to Syracuse. I didn't have a car. I was going to take the short line bus from Paramus. The bus driver came and said, Syracuse is closed. I said, what do you mean Syracuse is closed? I thought he meant the school. He actually meant the city. There was a huge blizzard up there, and it took 3 days to get back to school. We only made it as far as Albany on the bus, and then a whole bunch of us slept on the floor of the train station. And then they were able to hook up a train with 5 snowplows at the front of it to get us through. Oswego, New York got 108 inches in the same snowstorm. And I wrote about the whole experience. It's, 3 days to get back to school. And I sent it to the Passaic Herald News, my hometown paper. And they actually printed the story. That was in January. And then in April, I went for an interview for a summer internship. Remember, I was a freshman. I was 17 years old. And the editor said, I'm not going to hire you. I'm going to hire 3 interns. We have 150 applications. So I was on my way out the door, but before I got through the door, he said, wait a minute, how do I know your name? I said, I wrote the story about the Syracuse Blizzard and you printed it. He said, you showed initiative, you're hired. So Maggie, my whole career is a snow job.
Oh, I love your puns, but it really was. It
Oh
really
yeah,
is.
that's
Yeah.
true.
And then from there, you just kept writing and then eventually got into more specifically with baseball because your passion for baseball is unmet by anyone.
I think so. I don't follow any other sport, as you know, no football, basketball, hockey, all baseball all the time. And I read everything I can get my hands on online, print, listen to games, watch games, go to games, interview players. I know many of them personally. I've been covering the game for a long time. And I'm here in Seattle right now covering the All Stars. So I'm looking forward to that too.
You and I both met at spring training down in Florida a number of years ago. And even then, I was walking around with you, and everybody was saying, hi, hi, what's up, Dan? That kind of stuff. And you really helped open the door for me because I was working for XM and we had just started our baseball channel. And you really gave me an entree in to I'll say, club that is baseball.
It's hard, especially hard at that time for a woman and a Black woman too. It's just harder for you. And what you've accomplished boggles the mind. But I love Sirius XM. I still do. I'm a fan. I'm a subscriber. I've been on it on your show on Sirius XM and also other shows. And I'm just a huge fan.
All right, we're going to pivot a little bit from baseball because we're definitely going to come back to that because we have to talk about your upcoming book you're working on, but travel. Where did that passion come from?
I've always wanted to travel and be a travel writer. I always admired the New York Times travel section on Sundays. It was a great thing to enjoy. My parents used to subscribe to the Times. And I didn't even know when I was in journalism school at Syracuse, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a travel journalist. It was never mentioned in the entire 4 years I was in the Newhouse School. Not once was it mentioned. I found out about this years later because I was working for the Associated Press in New Jersey as a sports writer, and I was working from midnight to 6 in the morning or crazy times like that, newly married at the time, and working weekends as well. And that was not going to work for me at all. So I was looking for another job, and I found one, Motor Club of America, which is like AAA, a competitor of AAA. They were looking for somebody to edit their tabloid newspaper that went to members, had 130,000 circulation in 3 different regions of the country. And I got the job, and it was regular hours. And they had a travel agency as part of Motor Club of America. And my boss said, we want you to start doing travel stories to promote our travel agency. And at the end of the story, it should say book through MCA Travel. That's how it started. Started going to press conferences, met other editors, and got freelance assignments. I became a travel writer.
From there, then you decided to start a real journalist club, the National Travel Journalist Association. And that wasn't that hard to get people involved, was it?
We were 6 of us at first. We started in 1991, met in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, just 6 of us. Bob Nessoff is the other co-founder along with me. And they now have over 500 members. They're doing really, really well.
Because people are starting to realize that you don't have to leave the country in order to travel. There's so much beauty and space in this country that a lot of people don't even realize is out there.
Totally true. Most of my travel is domestic US or North America, Canada too, of course. There's just so much to see. It's a big country out there. There are a lot of things I'd still like to see and things I want to go to again too.
Yeah. Now let's get some little travel tips for people who are out there wanting to travel right now. Because I know you're out in Seattle, you live in New Jersey, so you had to get on a plane because you weren't driving a bus or a train to get there. What are some tips right now, especially for summertime crush?
Good question. Avoid connecting flights. That's number one rule. Avoid connecting flights. I made my connection in Salt Lake City coming to Seattle by a hair. and only because they delayed the connection by a few minutes because there are other people also delayed by storms in the east. Summer thunderstorms is the biggest problem, a bigger problem, the airlines tell me, than winter snow. Summer thunderstorms are their biggest problem in delays. What they did with my plane out of Newark, they would not let us take off to the west. So to get to Salt Lake City, they had to take off to the east. That allowed extra time on the runway because everybody was taking off to the east. And then they had to go around the storms, turn around, and head for Salt Lake. My flight arrived at 10:42. My next flight was at 11:04.
That's a run through the airport, wasn't it?
It was. I was very lucky because we arrived at gate 13 and my next flight was at gate 15.
Oh, that's rare because most of the time it's clear and then you next section 30 miles away, it's always
And
hard.
you
Yeah.
have to take a plane to catch a connection sometimes.
And a few other tips too that might be helpful for those traveling this summer.
Well, another tip is if you do have a connection, sit toward the front of the plane. It takes time to get out of the plane. And there was a virtual stampede on my flight getting into Salt Lake because everybody had a connection. And a lot of people were missing theirs.
Right. Okay. So we've got our travel tips. I'm always a person. It's like I won't hardly get on a plane unless it's a direct connect. I just once up, once down is good for me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things that can go wrong. And, Murphy's Law, if something
Hmm.
can go wrong, it will.
Right. But also like you were mentioning weather, really pay attention to weather reports before you even go to the airport. And then keep your fingers crossed, and not just where you're leaving from, but also where you're going to.
And definitely pack extra underwear in your carry on.
Very true. Very true. And a toothbrush.
That's for sure. And your
Yeah.
meds if you have them.
Right. And also, I think another thing that's really needed is patience because I have seen over the years travel agent, the desk people get reamed out by people as if they were bringing the weather or they were causing the breakdowns. And that person standing there can't do much for you, can they?
Very true. However, for the airlines, I have a tip for them as well. Better communications with your passengers. For example, on my trip here to Seattle, they could have announced on the plane what the connecting gates were. They didn't announce any of them. They could have also said that Delta is holding connecting flights because there are many incoming passengers who are delayed. They never did that. It would have put us all at ease. On the plane, since they didn't do that, everybody was frantic and all watching the monitor, the cartoon images of where the flight was.
Exactly. So they definitely need to communicate better for all concerned. Very
Yes,
much
very,
so.
very much. Yes.
Okay. Now, one other thing that you do is you do a regular travel itch radio. How did that begin and where can people listen to that?
Glad you mentioned that. That started 12
Of
years ago. We
course.
just passed our 500th episode.
Wow.
So it's doing really well. It's on blogtalkradio.com. It's on iTunes. You can also find it. There's a Travelers Radio Facebook page. It's a live half-hour interview show Thursday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern. So I urge everybody to tune in. We have a lot of fun in that show. As you know, you've been on
Yeah, yeah, I have. Once again, tell us where.
blogtalkradio.com. You can find Travel Edge Radio on Facebook and also iTunes.
Right, there you go. All right, let's jump back into baseball because that's where your real passion is. And let's talk about some of these upcoming stars. Like we were saying, the Braves and the Orioles are both really young, youthful teams. In fact, almost every week for the past 3 weeks, I'm watching the Orioles, and here comes somebody new from their farm system. Teams are starting to learn you don't have to keep paying for the old guys. If you've got the right guys in place through the draft, you can really build up your farm system, though some teams have almost turned away from their farm system.
It is very true. Steve Cohen, are you listening? The Mets owner. He has all these billions of dollars, most of them invested in his very old pitching staff. And if he thought he was buying a 300 game winner in Justin Verlander, don't think so. Justin Verlander needed to have 3 years averaging 17 wins a year. And that would bring him 5 games short of 300 wins. Ain't going to happen. He entered the year with 244 wins. Not going to happen. You just don't sign a 40-year-old pitcher and expect him to be your ace.
Keep your fingers crossed. And there's not only so much Buck Showalter can do.
I know. And Buck Showalter is amazing to me. He's won 4 managers of the year, but he's never won a pennant.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
an irony to me.
Well, I think he keeps getting put into rebuilding teams. And like you said, the owners then go out and try and buy their way in. And I look at the Yankees, they're struggling right now too. Aaron Judge is out and boom, what do you do?
Yeah, it is true. But losing Aaron Judge, I mean, if anybody has one indispensable player, he's the guy. I mean, he stubbed his toe on a curb in the outfield. Why did the Dodgers have a curb in the outfield? It was an accident waiting to happen.
Right, right. All right, let's talk about some of the other players. Let's start in the American League since I'm also still a Royals fan, but they are pitiful. And
That's being polite, Maggie.
they are really, really pitiful. And I almost feel sorry for them. You think back, they've won a couple of pennants. I was actually at the 85 World Series with my dad for game 6 and 7. But I look at them and why do teams win a World Series and then trade almost everybody away? Why does
It's
that
all
happen?
payroll. It's money. Kansas City is a small market, as you know, and because of that, it's hard for them to compete. And I think the Royals have done the right thing. They traded Aroldis Chapman already because they want to get some prospects, some younger players. That's the way to do it. That's how the Orioles and Braves did it too. They traded some old guys, and over the years, the Astros are a really good example of that. They tanked and they were terrible for a few years, but they got all those first round draft picks. That helps a lot. Alex Bregman is a good example. Just to bring in young blood really, really helps. And I know Dusty Baker's the oldest manager. He's a good friend, a great guy. He's writing the forward about forthcoming Hank Aaron book. But you have to bring in young blood, and that applies across the board. Yeah. Youth counts. Youth is important. The enthusiasm, the chance, these guys know they have a chance to make millions and millions of dollars. If you're going to sign old guys and give them big contracts that are multi-year, I don't like any multi-year contracts. It used to be year by year when I was growing up, and it still should be. And I'll tell you another thing about salaries, Maggie. Nobody should know what anybody else makes. In an office situation that you and I have both been in, I don't know what the other guy's making. They don't know what I'm making because it only creates jealousy and animosity, and that's terrible.
And not only that, folks walk through the door thinking they should get that same kind of money, but they haven't played the same way. And that's the one thing that both baseball and I look at the NFL and NHL, they've really set those rookie contracts down a little bit to give a guy a chance to develop because not everybody is going to develop and not everybody is going to stay healthy.
Very good point. And I'm amazed that in the last player owner agreement, the minimum salary was raised to $700,000. That's ridiculous. For no experience, $700,000 to play ball for 6 months? No, it doesn't cut it. And Hank Aaron's maximum salary ever, 240,000. Give me a break.
Yeah. I got a chance to meet him. And one of the things he talked about was the other jobs he had on the side to so that he could accomplish so many other things.
All the guys had jobs on the side. Where I live in New Jersey, Yogi Berra and Phil Rizzuto had a bowling alley that I used to go to. It was called Berra Rizzuto Lanes. It was a really good time. And all these guys had jobs. Everybody did. Mike Marshall was a professor in college.
Well, there you go. There you have it. All right, let's talk about a couple of other teams. As we go out west, we got to look at the Dodgers, always one of my favorites. What's going on with them?
Great
They're
team, great
winning.
offense, terrible pitching. They've had
Yeah.
so many serious injuries this year. Dustin May being the latest. Clayton Kershaw will miss the All-Star game. His back and shoulder acting up again. Walker Bueller hasn't thrown a pitch this year. I can go on and on. The Dodgers are going to be number one in the trade market. They're going to be out to get pitching. They may trade for 2 starting pitchers because they really need to do that. They also have the money And what I'm looking for is, are they going to trade for Shohei Ohtani? It is possible.
All right. He was the next name that I was going to bring up. I see Otani still on the rise. I see Trout with the constant battle with injuries going down.
Yeah, I think both of them are going to miss the All-Star game. At least Ohtani can't pitch. I don't know if he's going to be able to bat at all. But Trout is out for the All-Star game. Aaron Judge is out. Kershaw, as I mentioned, is out. And there are others too. Dansby Swanson is injured. So you never know what's going to happen in baseball. That was Joaquin Andujar's answer. Somebody asked him once, if you can give me a one-word description of baseball, what would it be? He said, you never know.
That's so much for that one word answer. All right, let's talk about your upcoming book, Hank Aaron. How did that all come about?
I'm a fan of Hank Aaron. He was my favorite player. He still
Yeah.
is. The late Hank Aaron now, unfortunately. I
Hmm.
saw him in person the last time he was at the Baseball Hall of Fame inductions. When he was introduced, he got the loudest and longest standing ovation of anybody on the dais. Just incredible. He got his recognition way late. He deserved it earlier. And it's unfortunate, I guess, that he didn't play in New York or LA or even Chicago. He played in Milwaukee and Atlanta. And I think he lost several MVP awards that he should have won as a result. I can give you specific years, 1959 and 1963. Those are two of the years, and there are other years, but those 2 years, he should have been the National League MVP. He only won one in his 23-year career. That's kind of amazing to me.
It really is. Again, but he never really complained about it. He knew a lot of factors were working against him, and he just went on with his life and did his best that he could.
It kind of reminds me of the tortoise and the hare story. Slow but steady, consistency. That's how he beat Babe Ruth's record. He never hit more than 47 home runs in any one season. And Barry Bonds, we know about Barry Bonds. He had that 73 home run season. But if you look at his record carefully, that was the only time he hit more than 49 in any season.
Yeah, but then, there's always the controversy as did he have enhancements?
Yeah, well, it's pretty obvious to me because when your head gets that big, it's, what can I tell you? As
Yeah.
Yogi Berra said, something is not kosher in the state of Denmark.
Very true. Very true. All right. Your latest book, and it is just a joy. And one of the things I love about your books is you give a lot of trivia along with what's, what is, and they're just purely baseball facts, but baseball's memorable misses, an unabashed look at the game's craziest zeros. How did you decide that this was the one that was coming out this time?
I teach a course at Bergen Community College near where I live in New Jersey. Course is called Baseball's Ironies and Oddities. And I keep track of these things. Every day, every game has some things that add to the lore of baseball. And I was thinking, like baseball zeros, things that people think happened that never did. That would be a great book. So the original title of this book was Baseball Zeros, but the marketing people at the publisher said, too negative. So I said, you got to get zeros somewhere in the title. So that's why it's in the subhead. Every line in this book begins with the number zero, such as 0 times Willie Mays led the National League in runs batted in. This is one of the great RBI guys in baseball history, one of the all-time leaders. He never won the RBI title. Amazing. How about Stan Musial? 0 times Stan Musial won a home run crown. Stan Musial was the first man who had 5 home runs in one day in a doubleheader. Only happened twice. Nate Colbert did it too. But Stan Musial had 475 lifetime home runs and never led the National League, Maggie. Amazing. But here's the topper. Nolan Ryan, right? The all-time strikeout champion, had 7 no-hitters, never won a Cy Young Award. 0 Cy Youngs for Nolan Ryan. You take Maddox, Glavine, Clemens, put all those guys, Steve Carlton, put all those guys together, something like 17 Cy Young Awards and 0 no-hitters. Now that's an irony. Match him up with Ryan with no Cy Youngs. Can't beat that.
Can't beat that. Definitely can't beat that. All right. But that's just to give people a hint as to what all is going on in there because I found myself going through it kind of going, oh, Wow. And it kept on all throughout. And you're a prolific writer, you're a great writer, and I love that. One of the things I also wanted to talk to you about, and we talked about this briefly, is the changes that are in the game right now. I never remember before this year, maybe I missed it, of as pitchers come off the mound getting their hands checked.
Yeah, that's a relatively recent development. And there've been a couple of suspensions, 10 games. And if they are suspended, by the way, they count against the roster, but they do not get paid. So that's interesting too, because their teams have to play short a man if they count against the roster. So that is a big change. But the worst change by far is what I call the Manfred Man, after the British music group, because Commissioner Rob Manfred came up with a harebrained idea that we should start every extra inning with an
At
automatic runner
second
on
base.
second base. This is not a Sunday afternoon beer league. This is Major League Baseball, or should be Major League Baseball. They're cheapening the game. I like the 18 inning games. And by the way, Rob Manfred, if that rule is so good, how come you don't use it in the postseason? You might remember we had an 18 inning game in the postseason last year.
Right, right. Uh the also the larger bases. Everybody every now and then you hear an announcer call it the pizza box bases
Yes.
and
Well, that's
getting
why there
them
are more
larger.
stolen bases. The guys think they're getting a slice at the end of their run.
Yeah. But again, that's one of those things that's just like, okay, let's make the bases bigger. And it's proven to be somewhat interesting, and you are seeing a lot more running or at least attempts at it anyway.
There's more running, but it was an unnecessary change. It wasn't a bad change like the Manfred Man. That was a bad
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
But the pitch clock was a good change, in my opinion. Even though there are lots of violations on both sides, it really has speeded up the game by about a half hour. I think it's great.
Yeah. Speaking of, explain how that works, because there are sometimes I'm not even sure the umpire knows how this works.
Well, mostly the pitcher has to throw the ball within 20 seconds. And you can see that electronic clock counting down 2019. It's like New Year's Eve in Times Square, right? Counting down to the magic moment. But the batter also has to be ready within 8 seconds. If the batter is not ready, he can get called for an extra strike. So not only can the pitcher get called for a ball, the batter can get called for a strike. There have been games that ended because the batter didn't, it wasn't ready.
Yeah. And they'll step out of the box and then come back in to at least try and give themselves a little bit of time. I need some time, they'll say,
Yeah, exactly. And
and do that.
I do like that the relief pitcher has to face at least three batters. I mean, managers like Tony La Russa and Joe Torre, they would change left, right. It was terrible. It
Yeah.
delayed the games, you know, crazily.
Yeah. Talk about the rule of throwing to first base to get somebody out too, because that there's a little bit of a change there too. And it seems like a few more balks are being called this year.
That is true because pitchers are now only allowed three tosses over to first base. And if you violate that, the runner can automatically go to second base. They're just trying to speed up the game. That one's not bad. It's okay, in my opinion. I can almost assign a percentage to each of these rule changes from 0 to 100, how I like it. A
Yeah.
Manfred Man would be 0%. The pickoffs, 60%.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. And I know you're not a fan of the designated hitter either.
I wasn't, but Marcelo Zuna is such a good story, Maggie. I mean, he was left for dead. I mean, he sort of hung himself because first he fractured his fingers a couple of years ago, sliding into third base head first. You don't do that. Broke his fingers. A few days later, a domestic assault charge. He was caught red handed and suspended and fined, but he made restitution. He did his public service. Then he came back and then he's arrested for DUI the following year. I figured that was the end. But he had a big $64 million guaranteed contract. The Braves couldn't unload it. They tried to trade him for Patrick Corbin. Nah, Nationals wouldn't bite. And there were other trade rumors. Nothing happened. They kept him around. He had a good spring training this year. And then in April, he had a horrible slump. He batted 0.85 for the month of April. There was a doubleheader between the Mets and Braves early in the season. I went to those games. He wasn't used at all. He wasn't the DH, he wasn't a pinch hitter. He sat on the bench. He was hitting so poorly he wasn't used. And then I don't know what got into him, but he started hitting in May like it was incredible. All of a sudden, everything turned around. And when he started to hit, the whole team started to hit. Because another guy who was not hitting was Michael Harris II, the reigning National League Rookie of the Year, who was doing so poorly in April, they thought about sending him back to the minor leagues because he had no AAA experience. The minute Ozuna started to hit, he helped Harris as well. The two of them together carried the team, and they've won something like 24 of the last 26 games. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's get some predictions. Number one, before we even go to that, when's the Aaron book coming out? Hank Aaron.
Picked a really good date for that, actually. April 8th, 2024,
Okay.
50th anniversary of Aaron's breaking Babe Ruth's record. And are you sitting down, Maggie? There
Hmm.
will be a solar eclipse on the East Coast that day.
Really?
Yeah. So the heavens are aligned too.
Yeah. That's fantastic. You know, like I said, I met him and I just thought he was so gracious and such a nice man, and I really wish you luck on that. All right, so we've got Hank Aaron down. You got any predictions for the All-Star game tomorrow? I mean,
Yes,
well,
I
Tuesday.
of course I do.
All right.
The National League is going to win, and they're going to win big. The American League has a winning streak, I think, of 9 consecutive All-Star games, something like that. The National League is going to win this year primarily because there's no Aaron Judge, there's no Mike Trout, and you take the two best hitters away. There's probably, I don't know about Otani either. You take two or three of the best hitters out of their lineup, what do they got left? The National League is almost all Braves, so of course they're going to win.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised just how many Braves did get chosen for the
Franchise
All-Star
record,
game, but well deserved.
franchise record, 8 Braves and 3 former Braves are also on the team.
Right, right. And see, I thought there should have been a few more Orioles on there, like Santander and a few others. But Hayes and Rushman will do us proud. That's what's important. And I
And
thought
those,
Kramer should have been picked as a pitcher.
yeah, and you've got those two relievers from the Orioles both taken. That was good.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, I'm keeping up with it, and so are you. All right. Travel Itch Radio can be heard.
On its Travelers Radio Facebook page or blogtalkradio.com or iTunes.
Right. And of course, folks can always go to your webpage at any
Yes,
time,
yes,
danschlossberg.net.
that is correct.
And you do a blog on a regular basis too.
I do. Not as regular as I'd like because I'm just too overwhelmed with stuff. By the way, the title of the Hank Aaron book, and you're going to love this, it's called Home Run King, The Remarkable Record of Hank Aaron. And obviously a play on words because it says it all. He is a home run king.
Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. Well, Dan, listen, great talking with you. Have a good time in Seattle. Great foodie town, as well as just so many other things to do there,
I
including,
just I discovered that last night when I ate right on the water and watched the sunset. It was really nice.
yeah, it's beautiful. And I just hope the rain holds off because that's a rainy area.
Not
But
in the
it,
summer.
it,
It's beautiful.
well,
Been
I was getting
beautiful.
ready to say they've sent it all east and south. That's where it is now.
Oh, I heard. I heard. Well,
Yeah.
keep it there while the All-Star game is here.
You got it. I'll do what I can. Once
Thanks,
again,
Maggie.
many thanks to award-winning baseball writer and travel enthusiast Dan Schlossberg. His latest, Baseball's Memorable Misses, plus lots more is available through his website, danschlossberg.net. Once again, that's danschlossberg.net. Until next time, seek peace and spread lots of love. I'm Maggie Linton.